Hello everyone, welcome to Fatty's Feast, where we make the best food you'll ever eat without leaving your backyard. My name is Josh. Today I'm going to be showing you how to properly slice a whole packer brisket for serving. Let's get started. All right, we've made it. It's finally time to eat our brisket. This is part 4 of my How to Cook a Brisket series. If you haven't seen the other parts, I'll put them in the description. Part 3 we finished that this morning at like 6:30 in the morning. So I'm pretty hungry. However, I will admit I feel sort of crappy today because staying up all night sort of really screwed me up for whatever reason, which is weird because I used to do it all the time, but it is what it is. So right now it's just about 8 o'clock at night. I was planning on doing this a little earlier, however, I just wasn't hungry and the day sort of got away from me. So we've been letting this thing rest for 13 and a half hours. So let's take it out of the warming tray. Oh, that's weird, I know. All right, so this thing is a dripping mess. I just got my gloves covered. I'm gonna throw in some rubber gloves real quick. And without further ado, let's see what we got. Feels very rested. That's probably a terrible angle. Oh, yeah, great reveal on my part. Look at that. We got crispy bark around the edges. A little soft on top, but that's not a big deal. My finger pokes right through. Oh, this is amazing. Even on the bottom, the bark's a little bit washed off, but it's not a big deal. Now I had my warming tray set at about 150, 148 in the point, and the flat 147, so we're in good shape. Like I said in the last video, very important you don't let your meat get down below 140. Now there's a few things I want to talk about before we cut into this thing because I actually want this to just rest a little more in room air. The first thing is when you're resting your brisket, don't rely on instinct to know that it's a safe internal temperature. I've heard people say, oh yeah, well I took it out of the cooler and it was still really hot, so it's gotta be good. But think about that for a second. The human body can only tolerate heat so much. And think about your hot water. That shit's only like 110 degrees or something like that. So when people say, oh, but no worries, I picked it up, it's still really good, it's really hot, you don't know it's safe. You need a meat thermometer like the Thermapen or the Smoke X4 from ThermalWorks just to keep an eye on it. I always say if you're gonna put it in a cooler, get that probe in there, and then what I can do, or what you can do I should say, you can take your remote and you can set an alarm. That's what I did last night or this morning when I was sleeping, so if it dropped below 140, I knew that there was an issue. Once again, ThermalWorks not a sponsor, I just really like their products. So speaking of hot briskets, another thing you want to avoid is cutting into a brisket right away while it's still piping hot. One of the mistakes I made the first time I made a brisket was I threw it right in the cooler after taking it off the smoker, and the internal temp was still like 190 after 2 hours because it was in the cooler. So that's one of the reasons I'm just letting this rest for a few minutes, because it's still pretty hot. I don't want to cut right into it right now because you spend 16 hours making a brisket to get that fat rendered and get all those juices in there, and then if you cut into it right away, it's all gonna seep out. And that may look good for the camera, but it does not make your brisket taste good. So that's why I said in the last video, take your brisket off the smoker, let it come to about 165, 170 internal before you throw it in a cooler or do anything else. I found I can take a brisket off the smoker and leave it out for 3-ish hours before it gets down to about 150. The last thing we have to talk about is your cutting device, your knife. So this is another Mercer knife. I'll put a link in the description. I just got this off Amazon. It's a cheap knife. I think it was like 20 bucks, maybe even less, maybe 15. But same theory I have with the boning knife is that if I drop it or I damage it somehow, it's not a big deal. I can just throw it out and get another one. And you definitely want something serrated like this or a slicing knife. A chef's knife will do, but I find this is so much easier to use. I've used a chef's knife. I don't like it that much. Okay, it's been long enough. Let's get to slicing. So your brisket's gonna be 2 parts. You have your flat right here, which is the lean section, and then the point. We've already talked about that. The point starts about right here. Now the problem is, you need to slice against the grain so you don't get any muscle fibers or stringiness, but the grain in the flat runs differently than the grain in the point. So with the flat, we want to slice like this, and then when we get to the point, we're going to slice it in half and slice the other way. Now what you could do is start right here and just go like this. I actually like to cut it right in half at first and just separate them out. And if I'm looking right here, I'm thinking we're gonna slice right about there. And if you're off, it's not really a big deal. So let me give this a nice go right down. All right, let's take a look. Oh yes, look at that. That is some good brisket. Do you see that? Oh my God. So we got to sort of run quick here because this is going to start oxidizing right away. So all I'm going to do with this, about 1/4 inch slices. Just come right down. And I'm noticing that the bark, or the bottom I should say, didn't burn at all, which is good. And we're just going to keep doing this until we get to the end. Fat rendered down very nicely. And if I look here, you know, we have the fat cap right there. There's not much intermuscular fat in there. It is somewhat moist, but it's just not a lot. And then right here is the end of our brisket. That looks pretty moist. Just breaks right apart. So you know you did a good job when you take this off and it's not burnt. All right, so let me move this out of the way. Now we have our point. What I'm gonna do with this is slice right down the middle. And we can see, here's the decal, which rendered out very nicely actually. But here's the end of the flat and then the point up top. And you can see there are 2 different grains. So what I want to do first is actually get me some burnt ends, if I can. The burnt ends are going to come right from here. That's all fat. Right here, we have what you can make burnt ends with. And that's just because of the fat content. This too. And to do the burnt ends, you can just slice them like that. Basically how you decide that is depending on where the side of the brisket is, because it's getting all that heat as it comes across. You can do the same right here. That looks so freaking good. And you can throw the burnt ends back on the smoker and actually make, you know, barbecue sauce and throw that in. It'd be really good. But anyway, with this, we're just gonna slice the opposite way. And when people ask for fatty parts of the brisket, this is what you give them. This cut is a little bit rough, actually. I'm not even gonna bother. That's fine. This fat is just rendered down so perfectly. And this is why feel is the main part to cooking a brisket, not so much the temperature. You can have perfect temps, but if it's not done, you're screwed. And here we go. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is pretty much how you slice your brisket up. But we have to do our taste test, don't we? So I'm gonna take somewhere in the middle here of the flat. We'll start with that. Let me do this one. This one's better. All right. So flops down. We do the pull test. Should pull right apart. Doesn't fall under the weight of itself, but comes right apart. Bon appetit. Yeah. Perfect amount of smoke flavor. Probably could use a little bit more salt. I'm happy with that though. I'm really happy with that. For a choice brisket, that's pretty good. All right, next let's get a nice piece of the flat. I'm just gonna tear this off. Oh, that fat is so good. Like I said, for being a choice brisket, not bad at all. Just look at this chunk. Look at all that fat in there. I love that. All right, now a burnt end. That could use a little bit more fat, I think. That's pretty good though, not gonna lie. And then last but not least, I just wanna try my end piece. Delicious. Now I obviously just cut this all up for you guys to show you how to slice a brisket. If you're doing this at home, I wouldn't cut the whole brisket up. Because like I said, what happens is it starts to oxidize the minute you start cutting it open. And then you get a very gray, unappealing texture. Like this is already losing color. It's starting to go gray because it's oxidizing. It's not bad, it just doesn't look as good. So I would cut it down the middle, and then depending on what people want, if they want fatty or they want lean, you can go from there and start cutting back. Another thing to keep in mind, like you saw with the point, if you start at the end with the flat, you're gonna have those bigger chunks that you just can't cut up, which is unfortunate, but it is what it is. This is so good. I outdid myself. Well, I'm gonna go eat this entire tray. Maybe. I already feel like shit. But I want to sincerely thank you guys for checking out this huge brisket how-to series. I hope you found value in it. If you haven't watched the other parts and you're interested, go take a look. I go through the prepping, trimming, seasoning, initial smoking, wrapping, all that good stuff. So if you're new to cooking briskets, you found the right place. And this will probably be my last video for another few weeks because when this comes out, I'm still on vacation. So I'm in California. Hi. If you're from California and watching and you see me, please feel free to say hi. But I hope you guys found value in today's video. If you did, please smash that like button, get my content out to more people. Also, if you are an avid barbecuer, leave a comment. If you have questions about anything we did in this whole series, leave comments down below. I love to hear from you guys. Over here, I'm gonna put a random smoking video just for you. You're gonna love it. And then right over here is the full Smoker Cook playlist. And then if you love me so much, right in the middle, you can subscribe. Until next time, everyone, I love you so much. Stay safe, stay happy, stay healthy, and stay chubby.